उddhāilo varuna purabhavage dvijamani gaurayamani jage. Sorry, I was singing in 2-beat. Uddhāilo varuna purabhavage dvijamani gauramani jage. Bhakata shamuha loya sathe gelana garabraje. Bhakata shamuha loya sathe gelana garabraje. Tathoy tathoy bhajalo kol ghana ghana tahe jajararol. Preme dhalo dhalo shanarayanga charanenu purabaje. Mukunda Madhava Yadava Hari bole na bolo re vadana bhori. Miche nida bashe galore rati divasha sharira shaje. Amana durlabha manava deho paya ki karo bhavana ke ho. Ebena bhajile jashoda shuta charame pori belaje. Udita tapana hoile asta dina gelo boli hoi bebasta. Tabe kano ebe alasha hoy na bhaja hridaya raje. Jivanaya nitya jana hashar tahe nana vidha vipada bhar. Namashraya kori jatane tumi thaka haya panakaje. Jivera kalyanam sadhanakam jagate ashiye madhuranam. Avidyati miratapana rupe hrid gagane biraje. Krishna नाम शुद्धा कोरिया पान चुराओ भक्ति विनोद प्राण Krishna नाम शुद्धा कोरिया पान चुराओ भक्ति विनोद प्राण नाम बिना किच्छु नाही को यारो 14 भुवन माझे नाम बिना किच्छु नाही को यारो 14 भुवन माझे उदिलो यारुण पूरभ भागे द्विजमणि गौराय मणि जागे भक्त समूह लइया साथे गेला नगर ब्राजे जीव जागो गौर चांद बोले कत निद्रा जाओ माया पिशाचिर कोले जीव बोलिया ऐसे संसार बितारे भूलिया रोहिले तुम्हें अविद्यार भोरे তোমারে লইতে আমি হইনু অবতার আমি বিনা বন্ধু यार কে আছে তোমার এনেছি ঔষধি মায়া নাশিবার লাগি হরি নাম মহামন্ত্র লও তুমি মাগি बकति विनोदा प्रभु चरणे परिया शे हरि नाम मंत्र लैलो मागिया Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Hari Das Thakur Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we'll just quickly read the translation. When the eastern horizon became tinged with the redness that heralds the rising of the sun, the jewel among the Brahmanas, Lord Gaurasundar, immediately awakened. Taking his devotees with him, he journeyed through the towns and villages of Nadia. The mridangas resounded, tatai, tatai, and the jajas in that kirtan played in time. Lord Gauranga's golden form slightly trembled in ecstatic love of Godhead, and his footbells jingled. Lord Chaitanya called out to the townsfolk, "You spend your nights uselessly sleeping and your days decorating your bodies. Now just fill your mouths with the holy names Mukunda, Madhava, Yadava, and Hari, chanting without offense. You have achieved this rare human body. Don't you care for this gift? If you do not worship the darling of Mother Yashoda now, then the great sorrow awaits you at the time of your death. With every rising and setting of the sun, a day passes and is lost. Why then do you remain idle and not serve the Lord of the heart? You should understand this essential fact. Life is temporary and filled with various kinds of miseries. Therefore, carefully take shelter of the holy name and remain always engaged in his service as your eternal occupation. Desiring to bless all living entities, this sweet name of Krishna has descended to this material universe and shines like the sun in the sky of the heart, destroying the darkness of ignorance. Drink the pure nectar of the holy name of Krishna and thus satisfy the soul of Thakur Bhakti Vinod. There is nothing except the holy name within all the 14 worlds. Lord Gauranga calls, "Wake up, sleeping souls! Wake up, sleeping souls! You have slept so long in the lap of the witch Maya. You came into this world saying, 'O Lord, I will certainly worship you,' but have forgotten this promise. You have remained in great ignorance." But having forgotten this promise, you have remained in great ignorance. I have descended just to save you. Other than myself, who is your friend? I have brought the medicine for destroying the illusion of Maya. Now pray for this hari-nāme Maha Mantra and take it. Thakur Bhakti Vinod fell at the lotus feet of Lord Gauranga, and after begging for the holy name, he received that Maha Mantra. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. So I'll explain how this ties into this verse I'm going to read in the Srimad Bhagavatam after we read it. So we are on verse 38. Oops, wrong chapter. Yes, verse 38. Dravida Prabhu, would you like to chant the Sanskrit? Oh, sorry. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Etava loka vinyaso mana lakshana sangstabhi vichintitah kavibihi sattu panchashat koti ganitasya bhugolasya turiya bhago yam loka loka chalaha.
Etavan, this much. Lokavinyasaha, the placing of the different planets. Mana, with measurements. Lakshana, symptoms. Samsthapi, as well as with their different situations. Vichintitaha, established by scientific calculations. Kavibhihi, by learned scholars. Saha, that. Tu, but. Panchashat koti, 500 million yojanas. Garnitasya, which is measured at. Bhugolasya, of the planetary system known as Bhugoloka. Sorry, Bhugolaka. Not Bhugoloka, Bhugolaka. Turiya Bhagaha, 1/4. Ayam, this. Loka Loka Achala, the mountain known as Loka Loka. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Learned scholars who are free from mistakes, illusions, and propensities to cheat have thus described the planetary systems and their particular symptoms, measurements, and locations. With great deliberation, they have established the truth that the distance between Sumeru and the mountain known as Loka Loka is 1/4 of the diameter of the universe, or in other words, 125 million yojanas, 1 billion miles. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given accurate astronomical information about the location of Loka Loka mountain, the movements of the sun globe, and the distance between the sun and the circumference of the universe. However, the technical terms used in the astronomical calculations given by the Jyotirveda are difficult to translate into English. Therefore, to satisfy the reader, we may include the exact Sanskrit statement given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which records exact calculations regarding universal affairs. I won't read it. It's like a page of Sanskrit, basically. So, but to satisfy the reader, it's there. Yeah. I'll read the next 3 texts. On top of Loka Loka mountain, there are the 4 Gajapatis, the best of elephants, which were established in the 4 directions by Lord Brahma, the supreme spiritual master of the entire universe. The names of those elephants are Rishabha, Pushkarachuda, Vamana, and Aparajata. They are responsible for maintaining the planetary systems of the universe. Text 40. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master of all transcendental opulences and the master of the spiritual sky. He is the Supreme Person, Bhagavan, the soul, the super soul of everyone. The demigods, led by Indra, the king of heaven, are entrusted with seeing to the affairs of the material world, to benefit all living beings in all the varied planets, and to increase the power of those elephants and of the demigods. The Lord manifests himself on top of that mountain in a spiritual body, uncontaminated by the modes of material nature. Surrounded by his personal expansions and assistants like Vishvaksena, he exhibits all his perfect opulences, such as religion and knowledge, and his mystic powers, such as Anima, Laghima, and Mahima. He is beautifully situated, and he is decorated by the different weapons in his 4 hands. Last verse, text 41. The various forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such as Narayana and Vishnu, are beautifully decorated with different weapons. The Lord exhibits those forms to maintain all the varied planets created by his personal potency, Yoga Maya. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, Sambhavam Yatma Maya Ya, I appear by my internal potency. The word Atma Maya refers to the Lord's personal potency, Yoga Maya. After creating both the material world and spiritual world through Yoga Maya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally maintains them by expanding himself in different categories as the Vishnu Murtis and the demigods. He maintains the material creation from beginning to end, and he personally maintains the spiritual world. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shreshtam Manamapi Shachi Putramatra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Mathurim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this series of verses is talking about a couple different topics. There's one that I wanted to focus on mainly, but there's also, Prabhupada mentions, just briefly I'll say, Prabhupada mentions about how Jyotirveda and astronomy and all these things having to do with the planets, all the calculations, it's very difficult to understand. But a fun fact is that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur got the name Siddhanta Saraswati by translating the Surya Siddhanta into Bengali. So he was a very learned scholar, and that's why he was given the name Siddhanta Saraswati. And then when he took sannyas, he took the name Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. So that's something. And then, so the next item I wanted to focus on was the last verse that I read. The various forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such as Narayana and Vishnu, are beautifully decorated with different weapons. The Lord exhibits those forms to maintain all the varied planets created by His personal potency, Yoga Maya. So this verse and the verse before it are describing the Lord appearing in a spiritual body on top of Loka mountain. So the Lord appears, and then Srila Prabhupada quotes in the purport, Sambhavam Yatma Maya. The Lord appears in this world, in the material universe, at different times to accomplish different purposes in the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, in the next verse, after Sambhavam Yatma Maya, Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharataha abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham. And then he says, Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So Krishna, the Supreme Lord, once every day of Brahma comes himself in his original form as Krishna to enact various pastimes. But he also appears, there's innumerable incarnations, and it's described that the incarnations of the Lord, they're like waves in the ocean. They're unlimited. And actually they're ever expanding. And we hear in the Srimad Bhagavatam about many of these incarnations. Vamanadev, we hear about Rishabhadev, we hear about Nrsimhadev, Parashuram, all the famous Dasa avatars of Krishna or Vishnu. So we hear about these avatars in the Bhagavatam, and they're all glorious, and of course, there are worshipful lords. But there's one specific avatar in the Srimad Bhagavatam that is only hinted at. It's in the 11th canto. I'll read the verse. I'll say the verse first, and then I'll read the translation. Krishna Varnam Tasha Krishnam Sangopangastra Parshadam Yajnai Sankirtana Prayar Yajantihi Samedasaha. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself, accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. So this verse that we read, the verse that we read in the 5th canto, it's describing how Krishna is incarnating with all of his weapons on top of Loka mountain. So in this verse also it's explaining Krishna in his incarnation in this Kali Yuga, who is incarnating with all of his weapons, Sangopangastra Parshadam. So this verse is referring to none other than Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who comes in his golden form. He's Krishna Varnam, or he's Tvasha Krishnam. He's not Krishna in the sense that he's not blackish like Krishna, but he's Krishna Varnam. He's in the category of Krishna. And he comes with all of his weapons and his associates, etc., etc. And so in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi... In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, this verse is quoted, and there's an explanation given by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that of the various weapons of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So his first weapon that he mentions is the Lord's beauty as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the Lord's beauty is described, I'll read a couple verses from here. Got this big one-volume Chaitanya Charitamrita. Very large and in charge. So Krishnadas Kaviraj, he quotes this verse, and then he gives a summary, a few verses about Krishna's beauty. Let's see. Yes, text. This is Adi Lila, chapter 3, text number 59. One can vividly see his glowing complexion of molten gold, which dispels the darkness of ignorance. The sinful life of the living beings results from ignorance. To destroy that ignorance, he has brought various weapons, such as his plenary associates, his devotees in the holy name. Raising his arms and chanting the holy name and looking upon all with deep love, he drives away all sins and floods everyone with deep love of Godhead. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya bestow his causeless mercy upon us. His smiling glance at once drives away all the bereavements of the world, and his very words enliven the auspicious creepers of devotion by expanding their leaves. Taking shelter of his lotus feet invokes transcendental love of Godhead at once. Anyone who looks upon his beautiful body or beautiful face, becomes free from all sins and obtains the wealth of love of Godhead. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very, very beautiful. He's extremely beautiful. He's Krishna, but he's come with the complexion of Srimati Radharani. And Srimati Radharani is described as being the most beautiful thing. She's practically beauty. She's beauty personified. All beauty comes from Krishna, of course, and Srimati Radharani is the first expansion of Krishna. And Krishna says about Srimati Radharani that in Srimati Radharani only I see somebody who can give me real pleasure. So, and one of the primary ways that Srimati Radharani gives Krishna pleasure is through her beauty. So Srimati Radharani is very beautiful, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has descended with the complexion of Srimati Radharani. And in that song that we sang, Arunodaya Kirtana, it's describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Kirtan, and his body is trembling slightly with ecstasy, and his ankle bells are jingling, and he's raising his arms and he's dancing in this Kirtan. So one can only imagine how beautiful Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, that he's subduing everybody just with his beauty. And also, just like we read in those verses from the Adi Lila, just by seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's beauty, just by seeing his beautiful face or his beautiful form, one becomes free from all sins. One becomes free from all sins and attains love of Godhead. And another point about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's form, it's described that his body is the body of a Nyagrodha Parimandala. And there's certain dimensions that are given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that he's 4 cubits. A cubit is what? Isn't it? It's 2 feet or like a foot and a half. Do you remember? I don't remember, but he's about 7 feet tall. And his arms, they extend down to his knees. These are bodily characteristics of saintly people, of great personalities. And so, yes, he's very, very beautiful. His complexion is like molten gold. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Gora Arti Kirtan, he says, Bahu koti chandra jini vadana ujvala that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's face is shining like millions of moons. Actually, the effulgence of his face, the beauty of his face, defeats millions of moons. So we can only imagine how beautiful Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. And with this beauty, he subdues everyone, and he attracts everyone to join in the Sankirtan movement. So this is one of the weapons of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The next weapon that's mentioned is his associates, which are described as his angas, his limbs, Sangopangastra Parshadam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's limbs are his associates. One of his limbs are his associates. And there's a description, further into that description in the Adi Lila of this verse, Krishna Varantasha Krishnam, it's stated that the primary limbs of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are Nityananda Prabhu and Advaitacharya. And they're just to the left. If you look at the picture of the Panchatattva, from our perspective, they're just to the left of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Nityananda and Advaitacharya, they're the captains of the Sankirtan army. That's what the Adi Lila says, Krishnadas Kaviraj says. So Nityananda, he's Bhakta Swarup. He is the, well, for one, he's Guru Tattva. He's Samashti Guru. There's Vyashti Guru and there's Samashti Guru. So Samashti Guru means the eternal Guru principle, Guru Tattva. So this is Nityananda Prabhu. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Acharya Mam Bhajani Yat, that we should know the Acharya to be myself. And of course, we don't accept that, for example, Srila Prabhupada, we don't accept that he's Krishna himself, but he's a manifestation of Krishna. So the manifestation of Krishna as the Guru is Nityananda Prabhu, Balaram. And by Lord Nityananda's mercy, we can approach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And without Nityananda Prabhu's mercy, we have no hope of approaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because Nityananda Prabhu, he's Lord Chaitanya's second body. Krishna, he's the Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, but his second body is Balaram, Nityananda Prabhu. So they're very dear. Lord Nityananda is very, very dear to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So if you displease Lord Nityananda, you have no hope of accessing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But lucky for us, Lord Nityananda is extremely merciful, like we see in the pastime of Jagai and Madhai. Jagai and Madhai were very, very, very sinful. But because, and I always forget, was it Mādhāi who threw the pot? Mādhāi threw the pot, right. So Mādhāi threw this pot at Lord Nityananda's head, cracked his head open, he was bleeding. But Jagai, he kind of came to his senses. I won't tell the whole story. I assume everybody in the audience generally knows the story. They were very, very sinful brahmanas who, they fell from their Brahminical principles. And Lord Nityananda and Hari-Das Thakur, they went to go preach to them. They thought, Lord Nityananda Prabhu thought, if we convert Jagai and Madhai into devotees of Krishna, then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, nobody will be able to question Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's potency. So they went to them and they preached, Bolo Krishna, Bhajo Krishna, Kora Krishna, Shiksha. But upon hearing this, because they were so sinful, they became very, very angry and they chased Nityananda and Hari-Das Thakur away. So one day they saw them again, but this time, Mādhāi, he got this clay pot and he threw it at Lord Nityananda's head. He was so angry. And so you can only imagine he was so sinful that he assaulted the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Lord Nityananda was bleeding. And through his mystic potency, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu caught some wind of this. And he went there with his Sudarshan Chakra. And he was gonna kill Mādhāi. But just before, or just after Mādhāi threw the pot, you're right, he was going to kill both of them. But just after Mādhāi threw the pot, Jagai kind of came to his senses and said, hey, whoa. This is a saintly person. Stop. What are you doing? So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with the Sudarshan Chakra and was going to kill both of them. But Nityananda Prabhu, being so merciful, he said, wait, Lord, this isn't what you've come for. You've come to uplift the fallen conditioned souls. And besides, Jagai tried to stop Mādhāi from throwing a pot again. And he said, really? And then he embraced Jagai. He embraced Jagai, gave him his full mercy. And on the spot, Jagai became a pure devotee. And then Mādhāi, of course, also then got the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after atoning for his offense against Nityananda Prabhu. And they became pure devotees. So this is an example of Nityananda Prabhu's mercy, that even though these two fellows were so sinful, still through Nityananda Prabhu's mercy, they were delivered to the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Narottam Das Thakur says, Nitai pada kamala koti chandra shushitala, that Lord Nityananda's lotus feet are more cooling than thousands of moons. So if we take shelter of Lord Nityananda, then we'll be able to experience some relief from the forest fire of material existence. And then Advaita Acharya, he is the incarnation of Lord Shiva. He's Bhaktavatara. He's the incarnation of Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, well, he's a combined incarnation of Lord Shiva and Lord Mahavishnu. But as Lord Shiva, he's Bhutanath. He's the master of the Bhutas, the ghosts, the ghostly people. So Lord Shiva is very merciful to the fallen souls within this material universe, that he gives them a place, these ghosts and Bhutas and all these kind of ghostly beings. He gives them a place within Vedic culture under his guidance. And so Advaita Acharya, he's also very, very merciful to the fallen conditioned souls. In the Chaitanya Bhagavata, Madhya Kanda, there's a description when Ramai Pandit was sent by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to inform Advaita Acharya. Well, I guess first of all I'll say that Advaita Acharya, seeing the fallen condition of Kali Yuga, prayed for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take birth, to incarnate, to save them. So he was worshipping Shalagram with Tulsi and offering Ganga water, and he was roaring so loud. Mahavishnu and Sadashiva, they manifested in his roar, and it's described that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that I was in my eternal abode, but Advaita Acharya's roar was so loud that my seat was shaking, so I had to come down. I couldn't ignore it. Maybe, huh? Yeah, Govardhan. But maybe Tyler can do a loud roar like Advaita Acharya.
It would be too high pitched. It sounds like a steeple.
Okay. So, right, I do. Thank you very much. So then, so Ramai Pandit was sent by the Lord to inform Advaita Acharya that he, none other than he, was the Lord that Advaita Acharya was calling down to take birth and to save the fallen conditioned souls. So he went there and he told Advaita Acharya, please come. The Lord has taken birth. He wants to see you. Please come, bring paraphernalia for worship. And so he came as quickly as he could, and he offered these amazing prayers to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But then after he offered those prayers, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu engaged him in dancing and kirtan. And then he said, I'm so pleased with you, Advaita Acharya. Now please ask me for a benediction. And he said, Lord, all of my desires are already fulfilled having seen you dance in kirtan. And he says, no. Please ask me for a benediction. He goes, okay. And so, sorry. What he says was, he said that all of my desires have been fulfilled just by seeing you dance in kirtan. And then Lord Chaitanya was very pleased with this. He was pleased and he said, I have manifested because of you. I will preach the chanting of the holy names from house to house so that the entire universe will dance as they sing my glories. I will distribute that devotional service for which personalities headed by Brahma, Shiva, and Narada undergo austerities. This I assure you. But then Advaita Acharya, being very, very merciful, his his benediction that he asked for from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says, if you will distribute devotional service, then please also give it to less intelligent persons, including the women and Shudras. So he was asking Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, okay, if you're going to distribute devotional service, distribute it to everybody. Not just to the brahmanas, not just to the demigods, not just to the intelligent class of people. Distribute it to everybody. To the less intelligent people, to distribute it to the women, distribute it to the Shudras, distribute it to everybody. And that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. He distributed it to everybody. And he does this through his next weapon, his devotees. And the devotee who's mentioned, Bhaktakyam, the devotee who's mentioned in the description or in the explanation of this verse, Krishna Varantasha Krishnam in the Adi Lila, is Srivas Thakur, who is an incarnation of Narada Muni. And he's a very, very, very amazing devotee. One time they were having kirtan. Well, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave him so much mercy. Some of his most intimate pastimes at the beginning of the Sankirtan movement occurred at Srivas Angana, Srivas Thakur's home. The nightly kirtans were happening there. And so one time, Srivas Thakur's son died during one of the kirtan. He left his body. And so Srivas Thakur's wife and the other women, they called him into the other room and they informed him of this unfortunate event of his son dying. And so what Srivas Thakur said was, okay, fine, we'll deal with this later. Don't let anybody know that this has happened. If you disturb Lord Gauranga's dancing and chanting, then that will be very inauspicious. And so he went back into the kirtan. He was chanting and dancing in ecstasy. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he understood that something was wrong. And so he asked Srivas Thakur, he said, what's happened? Has something gone wrong? And Srivas Thakur said, no, just let's keep the kirtan going. Just keep chanting, Mahaprabhu, I don't want to disturb you. And he said, no, what's wrong? And he said, well, anyway, my son left his body. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, he was amazed that Srivas Thakur was so dedicated to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was so absorbed in the kirtan, so absorbed in facilitating Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's rasa, that he didn't even care about his son dying, during this kirtan. And then, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought him back to life. So that's something about Srivas Thakur, who's an amazing devotee. But another devotee who's extremely important, most important to us as members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who on this day incorporated the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which he described as a branch of the Chaitanya tree. So through ISKCON, this Krishna consciousness movement has been spread all over the world through Srila Prabhupada's mercy. This Krishna consciousness movement, this Hari-nāme Sankirtan, has been spread all over the world. Before, when devotees of Lord Chaitanya heard this prophecy, Prithiviteyacha Jatanagaradi Gram, that my name, Lord Chaitanya speaking, my name will be preached or will be sung in every single town and village in the world. Before, this was understood, okay, that this is some kind of like exaggeration, or this is some kind of, it's not a prophecy. They didn't understand it as a prophecy. But when Srila Prabhupada came and did it, well, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur understood, and so did Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But Srila Prabhupada actually manifested that. If we understand the real gravity that Srila Prabhupada has actually manifested the prophecy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Very, very, very amazing thing. And in the 7 purposes of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada, the first purpose that Srila Prabhupada wrote was to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. So this is the business of the Krishna consciousness movement. To go out and to give Krishna consciousness to the entire world, to flood the world with Krishna consciousness. And the primary means by which we do that is the next weapon of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the final weapon of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the holy name of Krishna. So this holy name of Krishna is described as the essence of all bliss. Krishna na maha mantra eto shabhav, jai jape tar Krishna upajaya bhav. That the very nature, the essential nature of the maha mantra is that one who chants it, tar Krishna upajaya bhav, that one who chants it experiences ecstatic symptoms. So by spreading this Krishna Nama Maha Mantra all over the world, we're spreading the essence of all bliss, and we're giving people the opportunity to be supremely happy, more happy than they can even imagine, more happy than their material bodies could even handle. And it's also Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purno Shidho Nitya Mukto Bhinatam Nama Namino. It's also non-different from Krishna. It's full, it's completely pure, and it has the ability to completely deliver anybody who chants it, because Bhinatam Nama Namino. The name is non-different from the named. So Krishna is not, we like to say that Krishna is present in His holy name, but Krishna is not present in His holy name. Krishna is His holy name. So if we understand that when we're giving the holy name, or when we're chanting the holy name ourselves, that actually we're in the company of Krishna, that this name of Krishna is Krishna Himself. As much as the deity is Krishna, as much as Krishna is Krishna, that's Krishna. The name of Krishna is Krishna. And so therefore Srila Prabhupada said that when we chant Japa, when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, we should be very respectful, be in a very respectful mood that I'm with Krishna right now. And this ecstasy, this chanting and dancing and crying and hair standing on end and all these ecstatic symptoms, this is the essence of all the incarnations of the Lord. We hear about so many incarnations in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We were just hearing about one in this verse that we're speaking about, that Krishna's come on top of Loka Loka mountain. The ecstasy in chanting the holy name is the essence of all the incarnations of the Lord. Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata, that whenever there is a decline in religion, in dharma, Krishna comes to spread dharma. So what is the essence of dharma? Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that this Krishna Nama Mahamantra is Sarva Dharma Shar. This is in Nadya Godruma Nityananda Mahajan. It's a bhajan by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he's describing Lord Nityananda Prabhu spreading this chanting of Hare Krishna all over Nadya. So, Sarva Dharma Shar, the essence of all dharmas, is to chant the holy name of Krishna. So whenever Krishna comes, all of his incarnations culminate in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This verse, I'll read it again so it's fresh in our minds. But it's saying how the Lord exhibits those forms to maintain the varied planets created by His personal potency, Yoga Maya. So when Krishna is coming to maintain the world, the primary way that He does it, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is to flood the world with the nectar of devotion, the Chaitanya Charitamrita says. This is why He's called Vishwambhara. Vishwambhara means one who maintains the universe. And the way that He maintains the universe is by flooding it with Krishna consciousness, by flooding it with the holy name. And like this, He's maintaining the devotees, but He's also providing a levee, a barrier between this world and the influence of Kali Yuga. And so that levee is the Krishna consciousness movement. Without the Krishna consciousness movement, Kali Yuga would completely take over. This Krishna consciousness movement, this chanting of the holy name of Krishna, is the only thing that's holding back Kali Yuga. Otherwise, Kali Yuga would be, full on, as devotees like to say, full on. And so our job as members of the Krishna consciousness movement is to systematically propagate this spiritual knowledge, to propagate the techniques of spiritual life, namely the chanting of the holy names, through primarily distributing Srila Prabhupada's books to everybody that we meet. and to work very hard at doing this, to expand the flood of love of God and to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real peace and unity among people in this world at the lotus feet of Krishna. So I'll stop there and we can have comments and questions.
Hare Krishna, I just wanted to know there is one question pending on the Zoom.
Okay.
I think we could just assume that there's a question every day by Vijay Krishna.
Yeah.
There is a question every day by him.
Yeah, Tapas,
That's really necessary.
I think,
Maybe the devotees will forget.
yeah.
Maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, at the end of class we can just say now anything on the Zoom, and then you can just go right ahead.
Yeah, Tapas, I think we can just assume that there's going to be a question on Zoom. Maybe you don't have to.
Tell us if he's not there.
Yeah, I guess from now on you can tell us if he's not there. If Vijay Krishna Prabhu is not there.
And if we forget, he can speak up also.
Yeah, and if we forget, then Vijay Krishna Prabhu can speak up. So,
Okay, Prabhu. Okay, Prabhu. Okay.
try.
That
Yes.
was really well researched. You came with 5 books. That was very nice, and you sang that nice bhajan. It was really good. All those books, and you left out your favorite word this time. Well done.
Well, he tells me every time I give class, he tells me I say too much, which is true.
But he does it if he's tired or not in the flow. He was in the flow here. He didn't say one time. He's becoming an expert speaker. Sorry. We might not have time for this. I don't want to put you on the spot, but every time we hear about Nityananda, we hear that Jagai and Madhai story. It's very wonderful. But is there another practical example of Nityananda showing his mercy that you can think of?
Yeah, he could. Yeah. Shivananda Sain.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it was Sivananda Sain. He was supposed to arrange for accommodation for Lord Nityananda, and he wasn't there, and he came late, and Lord Nityananda kicked him. He kicked him. He got the. I mean, I can't get better than that. And he even said that, may your son. He had 3 sons. May they all die. And when the wife heard that, oh my God, Lord Nityananda, he just cursed our sons to die. But Sivananda Sain, he said, we've offended, we've disturbed Lord Nityananda. May our sons die, no problem. We've disturbed Lord Nityananda. Of course, he really, that's pretty intense mercy there. Man getting kicked by Lord Nityananda.
One other thing about Lord Nityananda is that he's Bhakta Swarupa. It's a name that he's called, Bhakta Swarup, because he's meant to show what prema looks like. That's why he's very restless. He's very he's Nityananda Avadut. He's like crazy, you know. Like he would go, you know, he was a sannyasi and he would go around, you know, to the women, you know, and he would whisper in their ear, "Will you marry me? Will you marry me?" And then he would go, and when he'd bathe in the Ganga, he'd play with the crocodiles, you know. So he was very, very restless, and he was meant to show what prema looks like. And then Lord Chaitanya would kind of reel him in and say, okay, you know, Lord Chaitanya was a little more sober because he was tasked with preaching. But Lord Nityananda, he's meant to show what just unadulterated Krishna prema looks like. So he's very ecstatic.
Don't forget how mercy is showed to Raghunath Das.
Yeah, I was
like
thinking about
having
that
him
too.
put on the Panihati festival, which I think we recently had last month or so.
Yeah.
And Raghunath Das was trying to escape, you know, from his parents wanted him to stay married and inherit and everything. So Nityananda knew that, so he ordered him to put on. First of all, he said, "Bring him here, you know, you're trying to cheat me." And he put his feet on his head. And he said, now create this festival, this Panihati festival. You know, because he was wealthy, so he bought all of this. So that was an act. And you're going to read the Chaitanya Bhagawata to really get it. There's this whole description of how he came from Jagannath Puri with his Gopals. He had his own crew, you know, 12 Gopals, and they expanded. And he was supposed to come to Bengal and preach. And so on the way, they just started chanting, and they didn't stop. And it's not like they didn't have a map. They didn't ask any instructions, so they went way off the track, and then they finally asked someone, "Can you tell us how to get to Bengal?" And so they said, "Oh, you're way off the track. You got to go this way." So they went that, and it took them a long time to get there.
And then they go way off again.
Yeah, just keep going on.
You go way off.
So then you have to read this amazing chapter. He would stop in a place, and they would just do kirtan, and everyone was getting into it, and they were started uprooting trees by hand. Children were uprooting trees by hand for a whole month. Nobody ate anything, and it's like all of these amazing things were going. Gradually, they made their way to Bengal, and he preached and delivered everybody. So that in this way, he's showing mercy to a lot of people. A slight little editing.
Yeah.
You may remember this or not. When you read the translation to those two songs,
Yeah.
at the end, of course, Bhaktivinoda signs it, you know.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Thakur, in this way, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he never called himself Thakur. You'll find that that's not in the Bengali.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, just like Prabhupada never said, signed his name A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
Yeah.
It was always A.C. Bhaktivedanta. So we fixed that long ago on that you read an old song.
Yeah, this is an old song.
Yeah. It's a little.
Anything else in-house? Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, it's your time to shine.
Yes, Amogha Prabhu, thank you very much. Dandavat pranams. Prabhu, when Lord Krishna, by his internal potency, descended to this planet Earth 5,000 years ago, not everyone was capable of understanding and accepting him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Based on this, my question is, why?
Well, Lord Krishna, his pastimes are very confidential. So one who doesn't have proper consciousness, it's difficult for them to perceive. I guess there's two ways you can answer this. One, Krishna's associates, close associates, they also don't see him as God because they're under Yoga Maya. And Krishna puts them under Yoga Maya, makes them forget that he's God to facilitate his pastimes. Like, for example, if Mother Yashoda thought that Krishna was God, she wouldn't chastise him, she wouldn't, feed him, or, all these things. Why do you need to chastise the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So in order to facilitate these different rasas, Krishna's Yoga Maya, you could say, bewilders Krishna's close associates so that they forget that he's God to facilitate the relationship. On the other hand, there's jivas in this world who are under Mahamaya, or the material energy, the external energy, who are bewildered and who don't have the eyes to perceive these spiritual subject matters. So somebody might say, somebody might read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and if they don't have proper consciousness, then they might just see, Krishna's just a lusty guy who likes to sport with other people's wives. And people actually think that. So that's one reason. Or I guess that's two reasons. But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So previously they were cowherd boys. Krishna was a cowherd boy and he had his cowherd friends. And it's difficult. It can be difficult for people to understand that this little cowherd boy is God. So Krishna then came as a sadhu, as a sannyasi, and preached Krishna consciousness all over the world and demonstrated amazing activities as a sadhu. Makes it very easy for people to understand. People naturally, they respect sadhus. They respect, saintly people. So he and his associates then came as sadhus and preached this very simple process so that people can naturally respect them and take to a very simple process by which they can achieve the highest goal of going back to Godhead. Is that a satisfying answer, Vijay Krishna Prabhu?
Oh, Prabhu, as usual, better than satisfying, very helpful, brilliant answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Prabhu,
jai.
Prabhu, we have a comment from Dhanapuri Mataji.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for wonderful class. I like the way you are giving the verses from all the books, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavatam and all that. You are very prepared. I like the way you said the Sanskrit verses and all, very nectarian. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And one more reflection that you said that check the imbalances of our life. I like that point too.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bye.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.